good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve coming to you on the 10th of May. Mark Norman. You may not have heard of this man's name. Vice Admiral Mark Norman has been in the news recently over an imbroglio concerning the Canadian government, and that will be the topic this evening. And a very warm welcome back to all of you. I hope you're having a great evening, and I hope you enjoy this conversation because the reason I wanted to tell this story, and I'm actually going to read you a story in a second about the whole sorry affair, is because here you have a man who was a decorated reservist, had a very honourable career in the Navy, had recently been promoted to Vice Admiral of the entire Canadian Navy, and anyway, he was at a meeting, a cabinet meeting, where they were discussing the procurement of supply ships for the Canadian Navy, and there were undertones of political involvement in the procurement process. And so anyway, after that meeting, somebody, and we still don't know who that is, there's another person has been charged in this also, but somebody leaked that information to the press, and it was quite an embarrassment for the government. So in January 2017 he was relieved of his duties, and in March of 2018 he was formally charged by the RCMP with breach of trust, and this trial has been ongoing ever since. The brilliant defence lawyer Marie Heinen, she is an absolute whiz. I've been reading some stuff about her. She is of the highest integrity that you can imagine. Her legal process and practice is impeccable, and she has won many high-profile cases. And so when Marie Heinen takes on your case, you can be pretty well sure that she believes in what she's doing, because she puts her whole heart into the job. Anyway, so there was all kinds of foot dragging and missed appointments and papers that were not provided, documents. There was a very special 60-page document that came from the PMO, and that's the Prime Minister's office, and this was to do with this political procurement process connection. And anyways, when Marie Heinen brought this up, all of a sudden the government stayed the charges and everything was dropped. And now they haven't issued an apology to Mark Norman, but anyway, this is essentially over now because the government was embarrassed in this process. Anyway, let me read you this story, and then we'll come back and I'll do a quick wrap up. Okie dokie, here we go. Government covering its tracks. Don't get caught. If your political party has been caught obstructing justice, as the political party led by Justin Trudeau assuredly was in the SNC-Lavalin scandal, what's the one thing you need to avoid at all costs? Getting caught obstructing justice again, of course. And that's what the Trudeau regime prosecution of Vice Admiral Mark Norman would have exposed. Senior Trudeau government officials implicated in a scheme to use the criminal justice system to punish an alleged whistleblower, in this case the second highest ranking officer in the Canadian Forces. The crime Norman was accused of wasn't a crime at all. In the early days of the Trudeau government, some senior cabinet ministers and political staffers tried to interfere in a multi-million-dollar contract that had been awarded for a much-needed supply ship for the Royal Canadian Navy. As in the Laoscam scandal, senior Grits wanted the contract to go to a firm that had supported them politically. A whistleblower blew the whistle, just like in Laoscam, and leaked the story to the media. The Trudeau government was livid. They went after the alleged whistleblower, just like they did after Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott for blowing the whistle on corruption. Norman, like Wilson-Raybould and Philpott, deserved the Order of Canada, not persecution or prosecution, for refusing to break the rules to help out a Trudeau government political crony. They didn't deserve to have their lives and reputations destroyed. Justin Trudeau, who, angelic visage notwithstanding, is a vengeful and petty little man, went after Norman viciously. The Vice Admiral was criminally charged with breach of trust. Norman vehemently denied he was the source of the leak and hired one of the best lawyers in Canada, Marie Heinen. That's when things got interesting. Back in February, during the pre-trial legal skirmishing over documents, Trudeau's staff were covering up. A shocking revelation came to light. Norman's lawyers alleged that prosecutors had been talking trial strategy with Trudeau's personal bureaucrats in the Privy Council office, the PCO. That's a big no-no. As in the last scam case, criminal prosecutions must always be independent of politics. If the likes of Trudeau can use the criminal justice system to reward friends like SNC-Lavalin and punish enemies like Norman, we will have fully become a totalitarian regime. We are no longer a true democracy. By all appearances, one of Norman's lawyers told the trial judge in February, this is more direct influencing of the prosecution. The Prime Minister's office, via its right arm, the PCO, is dealing directly with the PPSC, Public Prosecution Service of Canada, and the prosecution service is allowing this to happen. The presiding judge was not impressed. So much for the independence of the PPSC, declared Judge Heather Perkins McVeigh. And it was at this moment that many of us knew that Norman's trial, scheduled for August, just weeks before election writs were going to drop, was never going to happen. In open court, a senior judge had taken note of political interference by Trudeau's PMO and PCO, and at that point for Trudeau and his winged monkeys it became crucial that the trial never be allowed to happen. And now we won't. As Christy Blatchford revealed in a post-media scoop, the Trudeau government abruptly decided to drop the prosecution of Norman. On Wednesday, they stayed the charges. After last scam and after attempted show trial of Norman, we can now be left with only one conclusion. This is the most corrupt federal government in Canadian history, and they must be defeated. Okay, this is the article from Christy Blatchford in the National Post. The state is a powerful foe and it almost crushed Mark Norman. As Norman's lawyer Marie Heinen said Wednesday, no person should walk into a courtroom fighting their elected government or any sort of political factors. Most days there were half a dozen or more lawyers from the Department of Justice arrayed behind Vice Admiral Mark Norman. A physical reminder that what he was up against was the state with its massive reach and awesome power. The DOJ lawyers couldn't begin to fit at the council tables but spilled out onto the hard public benches. And here is Marie Heinen, the lawyer for Mark Norman. The happy result Wednesday, Heinen said unequivocally, happened despite, not because of the government. The government in its various arms, including the Prime Minister's office, the Privy Council office, the Department of National Defence and the Treasury Board, so collectively dragged its feet and stalled on disclosing key documents that the defence was forced to bring what's called a third-party records application. We brought that application for a reason, Heinen said. None of that information came willingly. Thousands of documents remain outstanding. First, the government asserted cabinet confidence over all documents having to do with the Norman case, refusing repeated defence requests to waive it. Then, 2 weeks after Heinen filed a third-party records application, the government did an about-face abruptly claiming what's called public interest privilege. And there you go.
I am Christy Blatchford, standing outside the Ottawa courthouse where Vice Admiral, as I always call him, Mark Norman has just seen the charge against him stayed by the Crown prosecutors. Unbelievable day, actually. It took less than 15 minutes from start to finish for the Public Prosecutor Service, Barbara Mercier, to tell the court what had happened. After more than 2 years, I think, since the number 2 guy in the whole Canadian Forces was first temporarily suspended from his job, then permanently suspended, then criminally charged with breach of trust by the RCMP. You know, his reputation effectively ruined, his good name of 38 years of honorable service, and in a few minutes in the court, all of a sudden it's over. And the prosecutor, Barbara Mercier, said, the defense, Marie Heinen and Christine Mainville, had about 2 months ago, handed the prosecutors the information they'd gathered in their investigation. And the prosecutors, give them credit, were open-minded enough to review it, and they reviewed it and they tested it in their fashion. and they determined that they no longer had a reasonable prospect of conviction. That's the test that all prosecutions in this country must meet. And there's kind of an ongoing duty of a prosecutor to reevaluate the case. And just as the prosecutor believed in the beginning that there was a reasonable prospect of conviction, now they recognize that there isn't. You know, it's just a very strange denouement. Mark Norman's got enormous legal bills. I don't know if he's going back to work. He's a lovely guy who only ever wanted to serve his country, and he's been dragged through the mud. Not by the Public Prosecution Service, which I think has done the right thing here, but certainly by the government.
So as you can see, this is absolutely unbelievable. Now, I'm sure that all governments have their scandals, but this seems to be a continuing story with the Justin Trudeau government. And also, it is an epic tale of throwing somebody under the bus without any proof, and then when this information is about to come out into the public through this justice system, suddenly dropping all charges and turning their back on the situation. But I think what's really illustrative about all of this is that this is the way the government deals with all people. We're just getting to see this because it's a high-profile case, and luckily Mark Norman had crowdfunded, I think it was $400,000 for his defence fund, and many of that was in $5 donations from veterans, which actually brought a tear to his eye when he was giving a speech about his, after his charges were dropped. Unbelievable. Anyway, I thought this was very telling. I think it's very indicative of where we are as a country and where our justice system is, and our government and the influence that it plays in our justice system. And the justice system is invaluable. We must keep our justice system absolutely independent from the political process, because if we don't, then we are no better than a tin pot dictatorship. Okay, well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like, comment and subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we will talk to you very, very shortly. Okay, see you now. Take care. Bye.